Week 11 of the NFL season is all but in the books. We just have to watch a Texans beatdown of Cooper Rush on Monday Night Football, but let's talk about each and every game from Week 11 and break it down and give you my thoughts. All right, so obviously we're going to go back and start with Thursday Night Football, in which the Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Washington Commanders 26-18. This game felt more lopsided than that. You had Jake Elliott missing a couple of field goals for the Eagles. The Commanders get a backdoor touchdown and 2-point conversion with about a minute left in the game. Philly really took over this game in the second half. I see they scored all their points in the fourth quarter, but you could tell that once that run game got going, because Philly's really willing to just lean on you and run the ball with that offensive line and Saquon Barkley and really just slow you down and wear you down each and every game. Like, that is this team's identity. They are a run-first team. I honestly think Saquon Barkley just being in MVP conversations in a double-digit week scenario. We're going into week 12 and a running back in this modern-day NFL where running backs were, it was like, oh my God, you're making a terrible decision if you're willing to give a running back more than $10 million a year. There's a running back in the race for MVP. We don't see that for wide receivers, despite wide receivers all getting, $30, $25 million a year. Philly looks good. Philly's defense is legit. They're real Super Bowl contenders. Winning this game, they're 8-2. The Commanders are 7-4. So Philly up 2 in the loss column on Washington. Feels like as long as they just handle business and do their job, they will be winning the NFC East. And it's who's the 1 seed, them or Detroit? Detroit's got that game advantage, obviously. Does Detroit slip up and can Philly capitalize, or is Philly the 2 seed? For Washington, there's a little bit of pause. People revered this team as a Super Bowl contender. I don't think that that's the case. And they're 0-4 this season against teams with a 500 record or better. Obviously, you want to see your team win and beat up on bad teams, and they're doing that, but they're struggling to beat teams that are good and great. And you see that a lot of times with a rookie quarterback. It doesn't help that the Cliff Kingsbury offense kind of takes a dip this time of year. We'll see how it pans out for Washington rest of the season. They still feel like a playoff team to me. They feel like a wild card team. Maybe, you take on the Falcons or the winner of the NFC West and they could advance past the wild card round. But this isn't a team that's going to be capable of going to Philadelphia or going to Detroit and winning a playoff game. Bright future with Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin's legit. There's a lot of things to like piece-wise on Washington, but they're not quite at that Super Bowl tier just yet. The Green Bay Packers survived the Chicago Bears in a 20-19 victory on a blocked field goal again at the end of the game. We see that back-to-back weeks. Last week we saw the Chiefs beat the Broncos that way. This week we see the Packers advance to 7-3 and beat the Bears that way. You look at that NFC North, man. Detroit 9-1, Minnesota 8-2, Green Bay 7-3, Chicago, they're 4-6, but I mean, they just got a hellhole of a coaching staff over there. They start to figure that out. And this NFC North is a fucking gauntlet, man. This is just disgusting for these teams that are going to have to play in this. I liked the Packers' usage of Josh Jacobs today. They leaned on him as the weather gets colder outside, divisional games. This is what I was talking about with that Josh Jacobs signing when it first happened. This is a home run. He stays healthy. He plays great. Aaron Jones has a talent ceiling close to Jacobs, but Jacobs just is that guy consistently week in and week out. Jordan Love, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, a 113 passer rating, though. Very solid day from him. Christian Watson, when he's healthy, that man's explosive. They got 2 really explosive wide receivers in Green Bay, and Watson and Jaden Reed. They survived this game with a blocked field goal. LaFleur, obviously an excellent coach. The Packers are just kind of the Packers. The story of this game was the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams finally looks really great now that Shane Waldron's out the building. 23 of 31, 231 yards, a 95 passer rating. They had 2 rushing touchdowns in this game, one from Swift, one from Roschon Johnson, who got a lot more love. You see a Dunze and DJ Moore, both decently involved. Like, this is a game, wins and losses at this point in the season, I don't think matter so much for Chicago. Their playoff hopes are pretty much dead. They'd have to go on like a really crazy run at this point, but seeing progression out of Caleb, seeing this offense look better, getting hope for what they can be, They didn't win this game, but knowing that you should have won a game against your division rivals, it stings in the moment, sure, what we saw, but it will feel better going forward to be like, hey, even though our record is what it is, we're competitive with the best teams in this division. Can they go out and do the same thing on Thanksgiving versus Detroit? Like, we'll see there, but the Chicago Bears are at least trending in the right direction. The Detroit Lions slaughter the Jacksonville Jaguars 52-6. Maybe Doug Peterson gets fired today. Maybe he's fired when you already saw this. It's a tough thing to talk about for the Jaguars. Listen, Brian Thomas 5 for 82. At least your rookie wide receivers producing. They got a real problem at the running back position when Tank Bigsby doesn't play. Travis Etienne just is not a bell cow. 12 for 27, 2.3 yards per carry. Not great. Mac Jones sucks. Nothing new there. Detroit, man. I mean, Jared Goff said, I threw 5 picks last week. Let me get my lick back, okay? 24 of 29, 412 yards, 4 touchdowns, a 158.3 passer rating. Oh my goodness. David Montgomery, 2 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs in this game had one of the best 1-yard touchdowns I've ever seen with the spin move. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 11 for 161 and 2 tubs. Like, Detroit is just fucking dominant at this point. They are a powerhouse in the NFC. They win games when they play bad, like last week against Houston, and when they're on their A game, I get it. It's the Jaguars, who are a joke of a franchise, but they can just run up the fucking score on you. This is disgusting, honestly. The fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown was catching touchdowns in the fourth quarter of this game is ridiculous, if you ask me, but Detroit, man, keep doing you. Next, we had kind of another unimpressive win for the Minnesota Vikings. They win 23-13 on the road in Tennessee. They do move to 8-2, and the Titans fall to 2-8. But Sam Darnold has just looked a little step lower than I thought he has been. Now, obviously, the counting stats are fine. 20 of 32, 2 touchdowns, a 107 passer rating. But conversion in the red zone the last 2 weeks has kind of been a bit of a, are they able to do it? Red zone offense has not been good for Minnesota the past 2 weeks. And when you are in a playoff format, or even just in a game versus a big opponent like a Detroit or a Green Bay that they'll have to face, converting in the red zone and not trading field goals for touchdowns is going to be massive in those games. You are undermanned at quarterback. Jordan Love and Jared Goff are both better than Sam Darnold. I don't even think Vikings fans will dispute me on that one, but they get the win. That's important. More important, obviously, to be 8-2 and to just be in the driver's seat. They're going to be a playoff team. They'd have to have a historic level collapse at this point to miss out, but I'm not impressed with this win. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are obviously a great wide receiver duo, but for the Vikings, it's like, you beat Will Levis only by 10. And I'm not saying you had to do what the Lions did and go drop 52 on somebody's head top, but it just didn't feel convincing to me that they dominated this game the way that I think they would have earlier on in the season. Now, for the Titans' perspective, Will Levis went out there. Honestly, not a bad game for him. Over 300 total yards, a touchdown and interception. Nick Westbrook-Akine with that monster 98-yard touchdown. So obviously that helped Levis get to that 300 total yards mark. But they obviously have to draft a quarterback, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, or Jalen Milroe. They'll be going in a new direction this offseason. This was kind of a, if I had 8 TVs, this would be on the one in the lower left-hand corner that I'm barely checking the score on. The Miami Dolphins defeated the Las Vegas Raiders 34-19, and Miami sneaky quietly kind of keeping their playoff hopes alive, right? That 7 seed in the AFC. We'll talk about Denver in a little bit, but one of these AFC North teams between Pittsburgh and Baltimore is going to be a wild card team. You feel pretty good about the Chargers after last night. The Broncos, huge win over Atlanta, but Miami and Cincinnati are trying to make a push. Miami had to pick up this victory here today. They do. Tua played a really, really solid game. 28 of 36 for 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, a 127.8 passer rating. How about fucking Jonnu Smith? 6 for 101 and 2 tugs. I mean, this guy has been great when Tua plays. I mean, you talk about a fantasy sleeper tight end. That's Jonnu Smith. Tyreek Hill gets back to the end zone. Devon Achane has a pretty solid day. Again, for the Raiders, I feel pretty similar to them as I do the Titans, right? There's some good pieces on that team. Brock Bowers has the rookie record for most receptions by a tight end in a game. 13 for 126 and a touchdown. You love to see that. Jacoby Myers is a solid piece. You got Crosby and Wilkins on that defense. Jack Jones is a player that I think is really, really good, but you're missing the quarterback position. And again, for the Raiders, whether it's Shador, Jalen Milroe, or Cam Ward, they should be in a better spot going into next season. But shout out Miami, man, for battling back, keeping their season alive. Tua missed some time. They're out here fighting. You know, I had them going 8-9 this year. We'll see if I turn out to be right on that fact. The Los Angeles Rams went into New England and beat the Patriots 28-22. Matt Stafford played really, really good football today. 18-27 for 295 and 4 touchdowns, a 142.7 passer rating. The run game was decent, but this is kind of the ceiling of what I was like, hey, I think the Rams could win the NFC West at the beginning of the year because Puka 7 for 123 and a tug. Cooper Kupp 6 for 106 and 2 tugs. Like, that is really, really solid. And with the 49ers loss, which we'll get to, you know, there's the Cardinals at 6-4, and then the 3 other teams in the NFC West at 5-5. The Rams can certainly go out there and win this division and become a playoff team, but the NFC West feels like you have to win the division to win a playoff game. Oh, excuse me, to even just get to the playoffs. Who's to say you even win at that point? But the Rams, Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Sean McVay, they kind of control their own destiny at this point. For the Patriots, it's one of those things where wins and losses don't matter at this point. It's what are we seeing out of Drake May? And you're seeing great performance after great performance for a rookie quarterback. This one, 282, a 100 passer rating. He's mobile. Wasn't super mobile in this game, just 3 for 27. Has a really good arm, making a good connection with some of these wide receivers. Like, you could see the receiving chart. Kendrick Bourne, 5 for 70. Hunter Henry, 6 for 63. Douglas, 5 for 59. Hooper, 4 for 35. Like, he is spreading the love around. The one worry that I have if I'm a Patriots fan is, where's Javon Baker and where's Jalen Polk, the rookie wide receivers that we drafted? You know, is this a case of New England just can't develop wide receiver talent again? If so, you're probably better off trying to chase a T. Higgins and give him a bag this offseason. In what some are referring to as the Battle of Mid, the New Orleans Saints take the victory over the Cleveland Browns 35-14. The Brown season's over, obviously. It's just a matter of what do they do with the whole Watson, Winston quarterback debacle. Do they draft a guy? Are they going to have a good enough pick? I mean, right now they're 2-8. So, you know, there's going to be a team in this draft that needs a quarterback that either reaches on Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck or just doesn't get one. And maybe that'll be the Browns because all the money that they have tied up in Watson, and they're like, let's just try and build a roster around him. But Jameis threw for almost 400 yards in this game. Nick Chubb looking a little bit more like Nick Chubb, and with that 4.5 yards per carry. Judy, they paid him 6 for 142. Njoku 9 for 81. Elijah Moore 6 for 66 and a touchdown. Like, they have weapons in Cleveland. They just don't have a team that can consistently produce at a high level. And for the Saints, this was just the Taysom Hill show, man. The guy has 7 carries, 138 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had, like, what was it, 8 catches for 50 yards. I was up against Taysom Hill in my main fantasy league. I'm not going to lie. I'm salty as hell. I'm salty as hell about Taysom Hill's performance. That last 75-yard rushing touchdown was completely unnecessary. Taysom Hill, fuck you. The Indianapolis Colts officially end the New York Jets season, a 28-27 victory. Anthony Richardson, let's start with the positives. A-Rich comes back after being benched and looks really solid, man. 3 total touchdowns on the day, 300 all-purpose yards, a 106.5 passer rating. I was against the benching at first, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, but a little short-term timeout for Anthony Richardson. Hey, man, you're the franchise quarterback. You're young. You can't be tapping on your helmet and tapping the fuck out of the game. We're going to sit behind a veteran in Flacco. I don't know how he's going to perform, but you're going to sit back, you're going to relax, and you're going to learn. And that's exactly what Anthony Richardson did. He came out in this game. Now, you know, Anthony Richardson still had a costly fumble. Like, he still has some of those turnover problems that we just know he's going to have. But the game-winning drive, he leads them on that, had a couple nice throws, the rushing touchdown. I mean, Anthony Richardson is I guess the most Cam Newton-esque quarterback when it comes to rushing, in terms of he'll just run right through a motherfucker. Well, you know, Marshawn Lynch said that. Run right through him. That's what Anthony Richardson one-on-one being tackled, whether it's a linebacker, a defensive back, a safety, whoever it is, like Anthony Richardson's going through you and he's getting some yards. Like you're not stopping this guy's progress. So if they can get him right, you know, he has a lot of the qualities that a rookie Josh Allen did and a young Josh Allen did. Hell of an arm, mobile, kind of a huge guy running around, make some erratic decisions. But you see with Buffalo, if you get it right, you can get an MVP caliber player. The question is, can the Colts get it right? And even if so, can they get it up to that Josh Allen tier with Anthony Richardson? Time will tell there. For the New York Jets, man, their season is over. You can look at the stats all you want. Aaron Rodgers is washed, man. He can't throw it down the field no more. He just can't. He can't accurately hit the seam routes consistently. Like, this is exactly what you would imagine. If I didn't tell you a name and I just said, what would you expect season-wise from a 40-year-old quarterback coming off of an Achilles tear? This is what you would expect. He's not mobile. He can't, navigate the pocket like he once did. He's not hitting the deep routes. He's not even hitting the intermediate routes the way he once did. It's a lot of underneath stuff. Breece Hall had that one 29-yard touchdown that was not a screen, but just right underneath to him. And Breece Hall is so talented that he makes the play. I heard a stat that Aaron Rodgers' win percentage with the Jets now is worse than Sam Darnold's and Zach Wilson's. He wins 27% of his games with the Jets. I heard some talk about Aaron Rodgers is going to be back next season for the Jets. And why on earth do the Jets want him back? I don't know. It just feels like a freaking disaster to me, man. Hey, you like the NFL? Yeah, you do. You're watching an NFL channel right now. Hit the subscribe button for tons more great NFL content. Let's get back to your video. The Pittsburgh Steelers defeat the Baltimore Ravens 18-16. A couple weeks ago on the old channel, I said that the Pittsburgh Steelers are Super Bowl contenders. I got laughed at. I was told that this is ridiculous. They're now undefeated still when Russell Wilson starts. And it's not to say that Russell Wilson played excellent in this game, but neither did Lamar Jackson. In a tough Ravens-Steelers game, felt old school. I mean, these two teams fucking hate each other, and it was great to watch because there was multiple, unnecessary roughness penalties. These guys were jarring in an era of football where everybody's buddy and friends. It was nice to see a game where it's like, nah, I hate this team. I hate this team. And Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson, he didn't have a great game, but there's no denying the connection that he has with George Pickens. And with a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who can throw the ball down the field and can really push the ball down the field, George Pickens is showing he may be one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL. He is really, really good. I liked what they did with Justin Fields in terms of the run packages that they brought him in for. If he doesn't slide just a yard too early, he's the, victory formation guy for that game. Obviously, Pittsburgh went on to win it anyways, but, the story of this game for them was obviously their defense. Their defense is so well equipped to battle Lamar Jackson. And I don't know, obviously I know Steelers fans, you guys know, and Ravens fans, even you guys know, the Steelers have had Lamar's number for a lot of his career. And I don't think it's necessarily just a divisional thing. You see him so much. You have a great defensive coach in Mike Tomlin, and you have a lot of really good defensive personnel to take on Lamar Jackson. TJ Watt is obviously one of one. He's the best defensive player in football, and I won't hear otherwise. They have a good defensive line that can generate pressure, but even at the edge rusher and linebacker position, they have a ton of speed to keep up with Lamar. Obviously, you have TJ Watt, you have Highsmith, you have Peyton Wilson, who they just drafted, you have Patrick Queen, who you brought in. Like, there's a lot of speed on the edges and from the linebacker spot to keep up with and contain Lamar Jackson. And you saw it in this game. Lamar's worst game of the year, without a doubt, was this game versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh now in a similar spot to the Eagles, right? 8-2. The other team in your division, 7-4. You're up 2 in the loss column. Now, Pittsburgh gets a gauntlet to go the last 7 games. 5 divisional games, and the 2 that aren't divisional is Kansas City and Philadelphia. Like, it's no easy task what Pittsburgh has coming up. But damn, this team keeps finding a way to win games. 2 of those divisional games are against the Browns, who their season's cooked, and 2 of them are against the Bengals, who can't stop a nosebleed. So I know we're putting a lot of emphasis on, the divisional games, and divisional games are always tougher. But Pittsburgh is a better team than Cincinnati and Cleveland. There's no reason that Pittsburgh shouldn't be an 11-win team. And if they can get the best of Baltimore again the second time they play them, that's wraps for this division. And for Baltimore, man, the one gripe I have with this game is you fell back to your your AFC championship ways. You didn't throw the ball. You didn't run the ball. All you did was throw the ball. And I thought that things would be different when you got Derrick Henry, but they need to take a page out of Philly's playbook, where in the divisional game versus Washington, in the first half, the run wasn't doing anything special, but you have a top 3 guy at the position, a good offensive line. You keep leaning on that defense and tiring them out. Over the course of a game, it's cold out, it's November, it's Pittsburgh. Tackling Derrick Henry gets harder and harder and harder. I thought we saw a couple, shoestring tackles away from Derrick Henry breaking runs off in this game. And it seemingly they went away from it, 19 rushing attempts to 33 pass attempts in a game that was constantly a 1-score game. That is a flaw of Baltimore that we saw in the AFC Championship versus Kansas City, and I think we saw it again yesterday. That is concerning to me if I'm a Ravens fan. All right, so I was wrong about Bo Nix. The Denver Broncos defeat the Atlanta Falcons 38-6. This was complete domination. Bo Nix, 28 of 33, 307 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 145 passer rating. Bo Nix is the truth, and Bo Nix is, the Undertaker behind AJ Styles meme away from taking that Rookie of the Year trophy away from Jaden Daniels, because Denver's going to win. Denver's going to win like 10 games. And Washington's kind of crumbling a little bit. We know how Cliff Kingsbury offenses can be later in the season. Like, Bo Nix is right there. And I got to give Nix credit. He's doing this with Cortland Sutton, who is good, but Devon Vale, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Marvin Mims, like, it's not exactly a fucking Pro Bowl roster of weapons, Like, what would Bo Nix be if the Broncos went out and got T. Higgins? What would he be if they had successfully traded for David Njoku? Like, the Broncos are a lot closer than people think, man. They have their quarterback of the future. They have a great head coach. Their defense is top 10 in football with a top 1 player at his position in Patrick Surtain. They have a good pass rush. The offensive line is serviceable. The run game is fine. They get another weapon or 2 on this offense where Troy Franklin develops or whatever it may be. And holy shit, like the Broncos, you talk about the AFC West, which for the last half decade, 5 years, felt like Mahomes and the Chiefs are in the easiest division in fucking football because the Chargers are going to charger, the Broncos are inept, and the Raiders stink. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this landscape of the AFC West, and I'm like, well, we still got the Chiefs with Reed Mahomes, Kelsey, and Spags in that defense. Now the Chargers have Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh, and they are lacking weapons still, but they're a 7-3 football team. And now the Broncos got a franchise quarterback. They have an excellent head coach, a really, really good defense. Coming into the week, them and the Chiefs were the only 2 defenses top 5 in yards allowed and points allowed. I mean, I'm sure the Broncos stayed there looking at this fucking game. And then you have the Raiders who stink. I mean, maybe they get Belichick and draft a quarterback or something and make it the craziest division of all time. But man, if you're a Broncos fan right now, you got to be off the moon, because it's not even just Bo Nix is doing this week in and week out. And yes, some of it is nice dump off stuff. That's coaching. But some of it is Bo Nix getting out the pocket, making plays with his legs, and pushing the ball down the field. And if you're a Falcons fan, listen, you'll probably win the NFC South because of the injuries to the Buccaneers. Although I think the Buccaneers, when healthy, were a better team than the Falcons. That Thursday Night Football game where Kirk just went off is kind of, I don't want to say a fluke, but over a 17-game pace, I do think the Buccaneers would have been a better team. But, to get just shell-rocked like this, the Falcons are pretenders. They're not real contenders. They feel one and done in the playoffs. Kirk Cousins has his limitations. I like Bijan, but holy shit, was he stuffed in this game. And, it is what it is for the Falcons. Going to Denver is not the easiest thing to do. I'm not saying that they're a bad team, but they're certainly not a great team. The Seattle Seahawks may have ended the San Francisco 49ers season, a 20-17 victory. Both teams 5-5 now. Geno Smith wrote them off, ain't right back with a rushing touchdown for the win. 12 yards out, gets in there, gets in the end zone, and man, we'll start with the Seahawks. There's a shot that they win this NFC West, and the NFC West is wide open. Whatever team wins, it's going to the playoffs. The other three are likely missing it. Jackson Smith and Jigba, like that breakout might be here. 10 for 110 yards. DK Metcalf 7 for 70. Nobody gets in the end zone, but Tyler Lockett, he's kind of the wide receiver 3 on this team now. It has been established. I love Ken Walker. The defense, especially with Mike McDonald, is going to be really good. Like, Seattle's a quarterback away from this being their division. That's truthfully how I feel. If Seattle were to move up in the draft and they got Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, or if they made a splash trade this offseason and they brought in Dak Prescott or something because the Cowboys didn't want him, or something were to happen where they got a really, really good quarterback, this division feels like it's theirs for the taking, because Geno has games like this where he plays pretty solid football, can go in and beat San Francisco. He also has duds where he's the reason they lose games. He's just very seesaw. But Seattle, with good coaching, excellent weapons, they could win this division. It's up for the taking. And for San Francisco, man, it just feels over. And not over in the sense of they need to blow it up, but this season, 5-5, your next 2 games are at Green Bay, at Buffalo. You still have Detroit coming to town. You're in last place in the division. You still have to play divisional games. You split this year with Seattle, who you've just dominated for, the entire run. Like, the vets on this team getting older. Kittle out this game with a hamstring injury. Deebo Samuel, 4 catches for 22 yards. McCaffrey, obviously he had all those Achilles injuries this year. The defense, not as strong. I mean, we saw that the last couple of years. The offense was just so potent. Brock Purdy, honestly, I don't think it's his fault. I think he's playing fine enough with what he has, but Juwan Jennings was the best receiver on the field for his team today. Tough to win football games that way. For San Francisco, I'm not going to completely write them off because we've seen such special things out of this team in years past, but kind of feels like the year from hell for this team. And when it comes to do they not pay Brock Purdy this offseason, because they don't have to this offseason, they can wait another season, there's going to be some real conversations to be had about that. The Buffalo Bills defeat the Kansas City Chiefs 30-21, ending the Chiefs' undefeated run at a season. Buffalo, they're good, man. They did this without Keon Coleman, without Dalton Kincaid. They got a lot of weapons in Buffalo. Like, if there was a year for Buffalo to win the AFC and go win a Super Bowl, this feels like the year to me. The Ravens, that defense can be got. Kansas City, that offense, not explosive as it once was. We saw it in this game. The Rashee Rice injury is a killer. Now, they'll get Pacheco back, but, Kansas City's wide receiving core isn't anything to brag about. It's Pittsburgh. As much as I like them, there's a clear quarterback advantage for Buffalo if that matchup were to happen. Cincinnati, they might even miss the playoffs. The Chargers, they don't have the weapons. Buffalo's kind of got it all this year. Josh Allen, MVP level quarterback, what he did on that 4th down run to not only pick up the 1st down, but carry his team into the end zone and go up 2 scores on Kansas City. Loved it. I said in the moment, you have to go for it there. And one of my buddies I was watching the game with, he said, well, I think they can kick the field goal and go up 5. I said, no. I said, whatever Mahomes needs, Mahomes could get in 2-minute drill. If you go for it and you don't get it, yeah, he'll probably get the field goal. If you go for it and if you kick the field goal, he'll probably get the touchdown. What you got to do is keep him on the sideline and put the ball in the hands of your MVP, of your franchise quarterback, of your guy. They did that. It pays off. He carries them into the end zone. That was an MVP level play right there from Josh Allen. The guy had 300 all-purpose yards today, 2 touchdowns. against a really good Kansas City defense. This is the first time that the Kansas City Chiefs defense has given up 28 or more points since the Super Bowl that they played the Philadelphia Eagles. Let that sink in. That is a season and a half of not allowing this kind of offensive outpouring. Not that it was some, massive offensive day, but 30 points on that defense, that means something. Khalil Shakur, Curtis Samuel, Amari Cooper, Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, the weapons are there in Buffalo. I've never felt more like this could be the Bills' year than this year. And maybe I'm getting a little high on the supply of the Bills beating the Chiefs in the regular season. But I've seen it before, and I didn't feel this way. I think Buffalo's got a real shot. The change from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady, we saw it have massive effects last year. The Bills are potentially a missed field goal away from beating Kansas City last year. I feel like the Bills got better, and Kansas City got about the same, and then the Rashee Rice injury really, really screws them. They don't have a receiver to go to in big spots, at least not in the regular season. Maybe Travis Kelce's holding out for, I only got a couple good games left in me. Let's save the energy. We don't need it in a regular season game, but 2 for 8, that wasn't happening last year for Travis Kelce in this spot. No Rashee Rice. DeAndre Hopkins is good, but again, an aging veteran, and he's just not the kind of receiver that Rashee Rice is, where he can get that yak and get open over the middle. He's more of a contested catch guy. 3 for 29. Xavier Worthy, the leading receiver, at 4 for 61. No other receiver had more than 30 yards for Kansas City. Mahomes, tied for the lead in interceptions this year now. The Chiefs' offense, even though they're 9-1, isn't that great. Now it's the Chiefs, it's Mahomes, it's Reed, it's Spags. I'm not counting them out in the playoffs by any means. But Buffalo almost got them last year and got better. The Chiefs almost got last year and feel a little worse. Because they don't have L'Jarius Sneed, who I know he's not doing anything special in Tennessee, but he was special last year for Kansas City. They feel a little worse. And I know it feels in the moment Mahomes is going to win every year. He's not. In the years that he doesn't, it's going to be your Allens. It's going to be your Lamars. Maybe Herbert, maybe Burrow come out the AFC or in the NFC. You have Detroit, you have Philly. There's teams that can win. And there's teams that are playing better football than Kansas City despite their record. Buffalo, one of those teams. Hell of a win for the Bills. And then Sunday Night Football, the Chargers beat the Bengals. I got a full reaction to this up on the channel now, so if you want to see maybe me go off for about 11 minutes on this game, check that out. But hey, Justin Herbert playing really good football. Joe Burrow playing really good football. A quarterback duel. The difference is Joe Burrow has to be perfect for his team to win. Justin Herbert finally has a real system around him, a good defense, a high-quality coaching staff, and decent enough weapons. Dobbins has been great this year. McConkey out of Georgia's coming along. Quentin Johnston has had some games. And for Joe Burrow, it's him, Chase Higgins, and those three got to be perfect against great teams or they lose, like last night, and they got to be really good against bad teams or they lose. Cincinnati's got some overhauling to do. Zach Taylor's got to be fired. He's the worst coach in the division. The defense stinks. It's bad. And it's an uphill battle for the Bengals now. They're 4-7. Whereas the Chargers at 7-3, sitting pretty, 91% shot to make the playoffs. How about that? Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh, year 1, playoffs. But those are just my thoughts on all the action from week 11 of the NFL season. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you love the NFL, hit the subscribe button on this channel. I am going to be growing a very good football channel here. We're going to have great conversations. We're going to talk football just about every single day, maybe even a couple times a day on the channel. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. I'll catch you next time. Peace.